This Nico situation is fascinating to me. I have a different perspective. So I think this Nico situation, I think Nico is going to be an example of transfer portal things for a lot of reasons. We all know deep down inside, coaches only want one transfer portal, and they want that transfer portal to be in the fall. So now you have two transfer portals. You have a starting quarterback from an SEC team that was in the playoffs that is now entering the transfer portal. But how we got here and some of the things that are happening with this is very fascinating to me, because I think this is going to start being an example for how the transfer portal is going to go once it opens up here in a few days. So it's going to open on April 16th, I believe. And because it's going to open very soon, I am going to be paying very close attention to what happens to Nico. Is he going to go to a team immediately? Is he going to go to a team in 3 weeks? Is he going to have to sit in the transfer portal? Because I believe he is now going to start being the example of how these other players enter the transfer portal. And I want to say here, and it really bugs me that I have to say that, I think these college football coaches are playing chess and these college football players are playing checkers, and that concerns me a little bit. So I'm going to get to the other side of this video and tell you what I'm thinking about and give you some examples of some different situations of why I think Nico is going to start being the example for this transfer portal before it opens up. So here's a couple of things that we're now hearing. The first thing we're hearing is that Dan Lanning tipped off the Tennessee coach to say, hey, your quarterback is shopping around and trying to go to a different team. The reason Dan Lanning probably did that is because he knows that some of his players are probably shopping around and trying to go to different teams. And he is trying to create a relationship with these coaches to really say, hey, if we're a united front and we start reaching out to people when our own players are starting to go to other teams, these players are going to think twice before they decide to go to these other teams. So I don't have an issue with what Dan Lanning is doing. To be quite frank, I feel like Dan Lanning did the Tennessee coach a solid by saying, hey, heads up, your quarterback is looking to go elsewhere, because what that does is that builds trust amongst coaches. And if you can build that trust amongst coaches, you ultimately can band together and kind of ice out, or dare I say blackball, some of these college players. And that sounds bad. This is a business, and the coaches have been losing and losing and losing. They've been losing all of their control on the players because they're going into the transfer portal. The coaches can no longer make these players all these promises, because when they get to those schools, they have two chances to leave those schools and go do other things. So if you're looking at this from a coaching perspective, I can see where the coaches feel like they have lost control. And the only way to gain control is to really band together and to figure some things out. And so I think that is what Dan Lanning is trying to do. He's trying to bring these coaches together and try to figure out a plan so that, hey, I'm telling you, right? I'm telling you that your player is actively seeking things elsewhere. Then obviously do your research. They do their research. They find out Dan Lanning is telling the truth. So in a lot of ways, this is swinging the power back to the coaches, because now all the players that are doing all these back channel communications, now if a coach finds out, that coach can in essence rat you out to another program. And they're doing that because they want that back in favor. I don't hate it. I don't think it's a bad thing here, because these coaches have to do something for the betterment of their football programs. If you haven't already, don't forget to hit that like button. Make sure that you are subscribed to my channel, and don't forget to turn on those notification bells so you don't miss any videos when I release. Also, if you want to, don't forget to leave me a comment in the comment section below. So here's what I'm thinking. If Nico gets picked up by a team immediately, then other players will say, cool, it's fair game, right? Everything's fine. Everything's good. I want more money. They're not going to give me more money. I'm going to go ahead and jump into the transfer portal. Somebody will pay what I'm worth. Okay, great. Because that's what they're going to think, right? But if Nico sits in the transfer portal and doesn't go to a team, and it takes him a little bit to get picked up, to go somewhere, I think the coaches have found a way to take back some of their power. And I think Nico sitting in that transfer portal, if he sits there long, I think it's going to impact players wanting to jump in the transfer portal. Here's why. Nico is what, 6'6", was the starting quarterback of Tennessee, dual threat, all of the things. He led Tennessee to the college football playoffs. So what better player could you want in a transfer portal? Starting quarterback, big guy, dual threat, all the things you need in a quarterback. Nico has all of those things. If that guy can't land a spot it is going to make some of these other players think twice, because there's not going to be a lot of players that are going to leave their team that are like Nico. Let's just call it what it is. And we all know how I feel about this transfer portal. I will plug a video up here somewhere that I made a year ago. My issue with the transfer portal is this. Most of the time, everyone entering into the transfer portal, they're not starters. They're just guys that were sitting behind the starters that were hoping to get an opportunity. And I'm not saying that those players are bad. I'm just saying that there's a lot of question marks with those players because you don't know what they can do because you haven't seen them. The other thing that happens in the transfer portal is you have a lot of people from lower divisions that want to come up and play on Power 4 teams. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm just stating to you what is in the transfer portal. And so the reason why that matters is because Nico is the cream of the crop. Nico is like the Caleb Downs of last year's transfer portal. Nico is like the Walter Nolan of last year's transfer portal. And by no means am I saying Nico has the same impact as Caleb Downs or has the same impact as Walter Nolan. But maybe he does because he's a quarterback, a dual threat, and can change a lot of dynamics. Think about Nico in the Big 12. Think about Nico in the ACC. Think about the things that Nico can bring to a team that, to be honest, a lot of these players aren't going to bring to their team. So Nico is cream of the crop college football player. And if he gets stuck in that transfer portal because he wanted more money, I'm very interested to see what that's going to look like for these other players entering the transfer portal, because if these coaches band together, they could actually make an example out of Nico. And they could actually band together and say, hey, we're not touching him. We're not touching him. And let's see how this goes. Now, do I think the coaches will be able to take a stand and they have enough balls to do that? I don't really know. And that's why this is going to be interesting to see how many players are actually going to enter the transfer portal. Because if I was a college football player or a parent of a college football player, I would be looking at the situation and going, if he isn't on a team immediately and he was a starter and he has all the skills, right? 5-star, or he has all of the things, why would my guy get picked up if my guy has the same issues? And if these coaches are going to be trading information like they did with Nico, I would be a little bit concerned if I was a player. And so I've said on record, I have no problem with coaches banding together trying to keep their power. I have no problem with players banding together to try to keep their power. I don't care when players hold out. I think players should hold out, go get what you're worth. I think we are actually harder on athletes than we are on the actual coaches, which I don't understand. That's a whole different topic for another day. And I have no issues with both sides of this. If Nico thinks that he's worth more money, cool, leave. If the coach thinks, hey, screw you, we don't need you anyway, okay, cool, leave. However, I think we should be paying attention to see what happens in this situation, because I really, truly believe that this is going to be an example that is created, and we're going to start seeing where a lot of different teams and different coaches fall on this, because I'm interested to see who's going to pick up the phone and talk to Nico first. If you can remember, before we were told that Nico was officially going to enter the transfer portal, something came out and it said there's 3 teams that have been in contact with Nico since he was started talking about contract negotiations, right? And it was Oregon, it was Colorado, and it was Ohio State. Now, as a Colorado fan, I don't know if Coach Prime would do it, but you know what? Whatever, I'll leave that where it's at. You had Oregon, you had Ohio State. Well, if Oregon ratted him out, we have a problem there, right? Then, after it came out that he was going to be released, notice how many coaches have already come out and said they are not looking for a starting quarterback. Notice how many coaches tried to be very quick to come out and say, we're not interested, we're not looking, we're not doing this, we're not doing that. They're trying to distance themselves from Nico. This is business 101. And I know I'm talking about players and people and things like that, but this is business 101. Everybody wanted to talk to Nico. Teams wanted to talk to Nico before he left Tennessee. Now that he's left Tennessee and Dan Lanning has ratted him out, now that Tennessee is like, cool, go on. We're fine. We'll move on without you. Pay attention to how many teams are trying to distance themselves and say, we're not interested. We don't need it. We don't need it. Because the more coaches that come out and do this, like I said before, I'm a little concerned that they're going to try to blackball Nico in order to set an example out of him. Now, I could be wrong, right? The first day the transfer portal opens, he could enter the transfer portal with a no contact clause, and he could already have a plan in place and he could do what he needs to do. However, if the transfer portal opens and he does not have a no contact on his thing when he enters that transfer portal, I would be very concerned if I was another player that was leaving a team, because if Nico was going to have a problem finding a team and these coaches are going to try to blackball him, I don't know. If I was a player, I would be concerned. If somebody that is as rare as Nico enters the transfer portal, and when I say rare, I mean by the things he was able to do for Tennessee. I'm not sitting here saying Nico is the best quarterback in college football. That's not what I'm saying. I'm talking about the context here of what he brought to his team. He did all of those things last year. We can't take it away. A lot of people will be like, oh my gosh, they only made it because of Tennessee's defense. Whatever you want to say, whatever excuse you want to give, Nico was the starting quarterback of the University of Tennessee. So he did some things that allowed that team to win. So he is who he is, and he is now going to enter that transfer portal. And so he might be setting a new standard for college football, depending on how this whole transfer portal goes and how things play out. I think this is going to be very fascinating, and I am tuned in and I am paying attention to everything that is happening. I'm not going to sit here and be dramatic and talk about how much this is ruining college football. This is one guy on one team and there's 132 teams. Like, that is really dramatic to me. And honestly, if we wanted to fix this problem, we could just implement salary caps and then we're done. So it's not really that big of a deal. I don't know why people try to act like, oh, the end of times are coming. Oh, this is coming. It's not really that dramatic for me. It's just a situation with one player. And let's be honest, I feel like 1 to 10 players doing this a year really isn't a big deal, because it's 1 to 10 players. And that's not even enough players on each single team that's going to make the playoffs. So I just want us to not be dramatic here and talk about how this is running college football, because I just don't think that that's the case. I think this is just something that's going to happen as long as nothing is capped and as long as no one's in control of this. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. I don't know what's going to happen. All I know is I'm going to be paying very close attention to how Nico enters into this transfer portal. I'm going to be paying very close attention to all the coaches who suddenly need to come out and say, we're not interested, we're not interested, we're not interested. And I'm very fascinated to see if he's going to sit in this transfer portal or if he's going to find a place to land pretty immediately. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. I'll see you in my next video.